Hey Internet, it's a beautiful spring day. It's been about 6 months since I installed this rain catchment tank, and I'd say honestly by February these things were completely full, so there was a lot of missed opportunity there. But anyway, that's for later to sort out. Just need more tanks, I guess. But this video is kind of a follow-up on how I think that went and what's the next phase here. So now I've caught about 3,000 gallons of water. Now I gotta distribute it. So the thinking is I've got a little irrigation pump from Home Depot. It's like under a couple $100. I mean, sadly, I'm kind of considering them expendable. I don't expect this thing to last forever. It's going to get a lot of wear and tear. The other design criteria was something that would be easy to just fully pull out and stash for the winter. I didn't want a system that I had to try to insulate or otherwise weatherproof. So the idea is that this will be easy, quick disconnect between the tanks and the pump. You know, come spring, I can pull it out of the garage and hook it up, and then in the fall, when it starts raining again, probably just pull it and cap the system off for the winter. So anyway, got a box full of parts here. I'm going to start putting this together. One thing I did notice is I've now drained all the water in the pipes here, and it's not bad now, but there was a fair amount of debris. It's hard to tell if that debris was from the tanks or just, you know, collected gunk at the bottom of them. They were used when I bought them, so it's possible that filling them with water just kind of loosened a bunch of stuff. So at first I was worried that all this debris was making it past the filter itself, which is up there. I don't think so. I don't really have a way to prove that yet, but either way, it's sort of making me think I need to put a secondary inline filter here before the pump. If there was any other gunk in there, it could break a little crappy pump like that. So that's on the shopping list. This particular pump looks like it has some, I don't know, maybe even a potentially non-standard fitting or just a different type. So it comes with a stainless adapter to standard 1-inch. So that's going to be what I'm going to be sending 1-inch in. And then here's the outlet. So I've just teed it here with a Schedule 80 plastic fitting, and then put more robust galvanized fittings on the end here. So I'll have two spigots, pressurized spigots coming off of here. One will actually tie in to this irrigation line here, and that goes way out into the field. And then the other one is just going to be available for a hose bib here for local watering. Okay, first up, which I should have done last year, fitted a 2-inch to 1-inch reducer and then installed a Schedule 80 valve here. So now I can safely open up the tanks and actually able to shut off this supply line. Which brings me to an interesting side note here. As these tanks were filling, I noticed that right around the time they reached the top of the first course, even after a couple big rain events, it didn't seem like I was getting any new storage, and eventually figured out, and of course felt like a dummy later, but because, if you remember, I had to vent those caps. I opened up the, you like break a hole in the cap, and that allows it to vent, of course, because you need to displace the air in here to let it fill up with water. But by doing that, as the water level rose up here, before it reached the next tank, it actually was just pushing out of the top. So in order to solve that, I actually had to shut all these lower tanks off, which another benefit to leaving all those valves in place, so I could just manually shut them down, and then filled the upper course separately. So that does present an issue now, of course, if I open the lower tanks as well as the top tanks at the same time. The top tanks will push the water down, and it'll try to seek level by coming out of those vent caps. So that is obviously not going to work out in the long run. I'm going to have to seal those caps again and come up with a new venting strategy, unless I just want to leave them as two separate banks. But I think my biggest worry there is having to tend it and ensure that my pump doesn't run dry. So got to work on that bit. Okay, so now I'm going to plumb this outlet to the inlet here at the top of the pump. And I'm going to do my best to minimize angles and anything that could slow down or obstruct the flow. The other thing I wanted to do is sort out a way to have a quick disconnect, an easy disconnect anyway, between these connections, just so that when it does come to fall or winter, again, this isn't going to be a big deal to undo. As far as I could find, at least locally available, there weren't easy 1-inch sized quick release couplers, anything like a hose bib. So what I ended up doing is just using a standard union, and so this will actually attach there on the top, and then we'll attach our hose here. In this case, I'm using a braided nylon tube that should hold up just fine. And once that's hooked up, it'll be easy just to unscrew that and pop that hose off. Here's a little PSA on Crisco. When you're trying to force these hose connections over the barbs there, it's a huge pain in the butt, so just wipe everything down with Crisco and it should go on pretty easy. All right, well, a week later and a whole box full of parts. About ready to finally put all this together, but figured I'd take a second and just go over a few components I'm going to be using here. I mentioned earlier a sediment filter. This is what I came up with. This is from Home Depot. It was like $45. You can get like a proper house water filter, which is a larger canister and filters to a finer degree. I don't think that's necessary for this project, and those got pretty expensive once you got to a 1-inch size fitting. So this showed up, and it's really just for sediment. So you can see that the screen size is actually pretty big. It's just going to catch any chunky stuff that might be left over the tanks or somehow get through the rain catchment screen, which I think will be perfectly sufficient for preventing the pump from getting clogged up. So that will go here on the other side of this union, again, kind of like employing this kind of quick connect strategy, sort of a little bonus feature of those unions. And then the other piece to that puzzle is going to be this 1-inch check valve, which they had spec'd for installation on the pump. Again, I think it's probably a little unnecessary as long as you have a constant, in this case, I have a more or less a constant pressure, keeping that hose full of water. But if the tanks ran really low, or something else happened, or there was a leak and they all drained out, there might be justification for this check valve here, because that would prevent water from draining out of that hose and needing to prime again. So I'm going to put all these pieces together and we'll see where we get. Okay, done with the rigid connections here. This sediment filter's got a little tap at the bottom with a valve, so we can drain that out if need be. And it also just has a hand screwed container to empty out the sediment, so that's easy. You can see I did integrate a turn here, even though I didn't really want to, but it was all going to get a little too long if I kept that check valve in line with everything else. Also, I was thinking that turn might afford me some kind of bracket here or something on the concrete just to kind of hold all this stuff in place, so it doesn't get banged around by accident. And otherwise, just a little PSA, if this is going to be your first time working with these barbed fittings, make sure you put your hose clamp on first. That goes on your hose, and then you can use your Crisco and shove it on there Otherwise, you're going to have a bear of a time pulling it off if you forgot to install this first. So that intake hose is plumbed, and without thinking about it, I have now miraculously blocked. This is my hookup from my irrigation system that was meant to be fed by this bib here. And now you can see I've done a pretty excellent job of blocking it. So I'll sort that out. Another little thing, I was going to work on this flexible line and had bought some flexible water. This is a PVC Schedule 40 flex hose for that job, and thought I was going to be clever and use some. These are actually like hose repair parts, but they're kind of nice brass fittings, and they're both 3/4, but there's like no friction there at all. So even with a clamp, I don't think I'd quite get there. Luckily, I had some scrap 3/4 more of this nylon braided hose, so that's what I'll use to make that up. It's not going to win any beauty contests, but I did get the hose bib plumbed to the irrigation line here using this 90 to avoid this other plumbing. So that should be good to go. And that is just using hose bib parts, so just standard hose connections there. So easy to take on and off when the time comes. So that is that. And intake is all plumbed and ready to go. I kind of wanted to get all of these pieces situated before anchoring down the pump, because stuff changes, but I'm pretty happy with that. I think it will be great, at least in a fair weather environment. So I'll mark this and place a few concrete anchors to keep this puppy in place. Got a little friend with me today. Well, this is several weeks later, and I think for everyone making videos where their brand depends on it, they're probably a lot less likely to admit errors, but this didn't go as as well as I thought. For anyone keeping track, I had fully switched the inlet and the outlet on this pump and got all excited, powered it up, and flooded that cavity with water and ran it, and nothing happened. And turned the valve, nothing happened. So that's when I knew it was time to stop and actually read the instructions, and sure enough, had this backwards. It obviously looks terrible at the moment. I've made a few commitments to some of these angles, so I may end up re-engineering this. But knowing that everything's going to change, I'm kind of inclined to leave it alone for a second. But now I do have my 2 taps up here on top, which is actually maybe a little bit better. I'm realizing that strain on this hose or anything else connected to these outlets will probably do better here than on the side. Putting all this extra wear and tear on the pump there. And I mean, otherwise, you know, does what it's supposed to do. Pretty awesome that that's just water that I got for free from the rain. Shouldn't say free. I mean, all in with all the tanks, the pump, the filter. I mean, I'm probably still less than $1,500 all added up and post links to everything as usual. But I'd say it's, I mean, at least out here, we don't get a lot of rain. I'd say it's well worth it. So current plan is going to be using this other bib here. That's going to go into this irrigation line, and that is delivering power to a bunch of trees, the chicken house down there, our donkeys maybe, and anything we dream up in the future. So that's that, and I'll see you next time. Cheers. Just an end of summer update. It's now Labor Day. About a month ago, maybe, we had finished draining the top bank of IBC totes. So I went ahead and opened all the valves down below. You can see that those are now just about used up, so it all timed out pretty well. I did have a problem with the valves. You can see this one's actually still full, where these valves, I can only imagine because of the pressure pushing back on the valve, although it doesn't make any sense since these are designed to hold this much liquid. So I'll figure that out. But I'm going to open that valve and equalize the loss of our tanks. And some folks had called out in the comments, and they were 100% right, that by venting the lower banks, as they fill up this winter and spring, that water is just going to rise and push right out of the top of the vent. So I might see if I can address that today. And I'm going to start by pulling off a couple of these caps and seeing what we can do. Here's one of those caps removed. And it's got this center plug. It's threaded. I was kind of hoping at first that this would be maybe a standard 1 1/4 or 1.5 inch pipe thread, but I don't think it is. That looks far too coarse. So, need a new plan here. I think the general idea is to hook up a line to each of those caps, continue the same venting strategy, but if I hook up all the caps to one vent tube, then I can take that tube up and run it alongside the upper tank, and water's gonna always seek level, so it won't overflow. It'll just back up that vent tube up to the highest point, and then it should start draining down again once I'm using the water. So there's a couple different ways to do that. Initially, I was thinking maybe just some polyline with some threaded fittings, and that's why I was kind of hoping maybe I could use this somehow, but I don't think that's going to work. So an even cheaper possible solution is just using some irrigation hose that roll the skinny 1/4 inch line. So I might investigate that and report back. Considering those vents were able to function just fine, being incredibly small for a giant tank, I think I'm just going to use some drip irrigation line in fittings. We'll just puncture a couple small holes in the IBC tanks themselves and gang them together, make a small manifold with that flexible tubing, and I'll run that up the side of the top tank, and I think it'll work. I figure I'm going to put these little vent holes at that higher, you can see there inside there's kind of a low point and a high point. There might be an argument for either, but I'm going to go with the high point because my drill can reach it and it'll be easier to service in the future. So I'm just going to do one hole per tank, and then we'll gang them all together with that drip line. Okay, got those little irrigation fittings in. Just put some T's in there, I drilled the holes. It's a nice tight fit. So I don't think we might get a little bit of water seeping out of there, but I don't think it's going to be an issue for the venting of all of it. And we'll go ahead and get this set up. And if you're wondering why I'm using irrigation tubing for this project, I mean, it's cheap. The fittings are cheap. It's relatively air and water tight, and I think it's going to be just enough to get the job done. I also had a bunch of stuff laying around. Okay, the last step is here at the end of the line. I got this length of hose here, and I mean, it's pretty simple, but since water is going to find level, I just need to take that all the way to the top, just past the uppermost point of the whole tank system. And in theory, then it will vent, and then as this water level fills up, it'll actually push water, into that vent line and make its way to the top, but it should find level there with the top tank. And in theory, these won't overflow. Now, obviously, since we've installed this new vent system, the old vent system is going to have to be rolled back. So I will go through and take all those caps off and seal those so they don't overflow anymore. I'm going to do my best to protect this line. So I'm just going to tuck it here underneath those bars, and we'll send it all the way up. These caps might all be a little different, but generally speaking, I'm just going to fill them up with some caulk, and that should be sufficient to reseal them. All right, you can see I have that vent tube going all the way to the tippy top, and that's just sitting above the top of the high water mark on the top tank. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish sealing all of the rest of those caps, and then we'll go ahead and open this guy up and let him equalize. So I've got that tank open, and you can hear the vent is pulling air. It's, it's working hard. If I was trying to vent this to be able to move mass amounts of water in a quick period of time, we need a bigger vent system. But since this really only has to vent based on the accumulation of rainfall and displacement, I think we're going to be all right.